everybody's permission, since it's 9:01, why don't we go ahead and call the meeting to order for our 14 April PPACG Board of Directors meeting. And if I could, Andy, if I could just ask you to help us establish a quorum. Let's make sure we've got a quorum here this morning.
We absolutely have a quorum. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. And Board Member Gabler, see what you're going to miss. All these interesting questions. So interesting. Former Board Member Norm Steen has decided to join us as well this morning.
Well, conversations of chocolate are always good, but I really only want the dark chocolate. So work on that.
All right, I'm with you, Jill. That's my favorite too.
We definitely have a quorum. Jess B, I'll put you on the spot. I don't know if you wanted to just mention for the record the board members, voting board members that we have on the line. That would be super.
Yep, let's go ahead and do a roll call. That way we catch everybody that's in here. So I will just go right down the list of who I see so far, and then I will get you at the end if I don't name you. So I see Jill, Wayne, Yolanda, Sharon, John, Graham, Chair Vanderwerf, Cami, Holly, Dick, Don, Glant, members from military. I see Miss Colonel Fitch from Peterson. Is there any board members that I didn't see come on? All right, with that, I definitely can confirm we have a quorum there. So just remember to state your name when making a motion so that we catch that in the recording and for the meetings and for everybody else listening in. And if you can mute yourself while you are not speaking, that helps us control the background volume. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Jessica. It's my understanding also that Vice Chair Thompson has some personal business she's attending to. She may be able to join. Andy, do you have a comment to that? Or?
I see Sharon is on the line. Welcome. Welcome, Councilmember Thompson.
I'll hang in there as long as I can. Thank you.
Good. Oh, great. Glad to see you there.
Thank you.
And do we have any new participants in this meeting? Again, to Andy's point, welcome back, Mr. Steen. Nice to see you. Appreciate the flag in the background. That's awesome. And is there anybody else that is not participating in these meetings that would like to do a quick introduction? Oh, okay. I see a Mailing Rodriguez.
Yes.
Why
Hi,
don't you
everyone.
introduce yourself?
Hi, Mailing Rodriguez, she, her, hers. Melissa Mart actually sent this invite. So I am with Innovations with Aging Collaborative. I just came on board as a program manager. So I'm excited to just listen to this meeting. I'll be here for an hour and nice to meet everyone.
Great. Thank you for introducing yourself. That's awesome. Anybody else? All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and go to the agenda. And the first thing we need to do is approve the agenda. Hopefully everybody has had an opportunity to take a look at it. And with that in mind, I'll entertain a motion. There we go. We have, please go ahead.
Well, yeah, this is Dick Elsner. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Dick.
This is Sharon. I'll second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or corrections they wish to make to the agenda? And hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with a vote. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
And I'll vote aye.
Aye.
And are there any nays? Hearing none, the agenda passes unanimously. Let's go to item number 3. I think we have just one item on there, and it's a bittersweet item, but this is obviously our farewell to our board member, Jill Gabler. And Andy, I don't know if you have a little bit of programming associated with this, if you're interested in picking that up for us here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to kick it off, and then we'll open it up for other comments from board members. We're really going to miss Councilmember Gabler. And I just want to say on behalf of the staff here at PPACG, we really thank you for all of your support, your leadership, your support of our organization, especially since we went through a little bit of a difficult time for a couple of years there, and your interest in making sure that we operated at our best and took care of our employees. and we're able to come out of our transition here even stronger. We can't thank you enough for all of your support and your interest in making sure that we thrive and get engaged and help the community in so many ways. So we're really going to miss you. I'm going to miss you, Jill. I appreciate all your support. So I know we're going to be working together on various projects going forward, passenger rail and other projects, but can't thank you enough on behalf of PPACG.
Thank you, Andy.
Great. Thank you, Andy. The floor is open for others to make comments.
This is John Graham from Manitou Springs. Jill, I would very much like to repeat the notes of appreciation. Your service has been, I think, stellar in all your capacities, in particular in dealing with the city of Manitou Springs and some of our recreation issues in the incline. I think you've served with great objectivity and sincerity. I like that you have the enthusiasm of being a very active outdoor person. And so I hope to see you around. Maybe we'll see you on one of the trails around town.
Thank
care.
you, John. I do love Manitou, and I appreciate the partnerships we have together between our two cities.
Jill,
Great.
this is
Yes, please,
Holly.
Holly, go ahead.
I just want to say it's just wonderful working with you. I'm looking forward to keeping going on the Front Range passenger rail, but I think you've been a great asset to PPACG and, you know, a great asset to our city. And so every time I ride a bike or call Jimmy John's, I will remember that it was you who helped give Jimmy John's bike lanes downtown. No, I just appreciate you're just so passionate about the things that you are interested in, and you've been very good for the city. So as for PPACG, so we're going to miss you greatly.
Thank you, Holly. I too have really enjoyed working with you, and I'm just really glad you're going to still be there after I'm gone, because you guys are doing great stuff.
Great. Other comments from the board members or anybody that is online here? And before we go that forward with that, we've got some chat comments, which I'll mention in a minute, but let's see if we got anybody else that's online here.
Dan, this is Yolanda.
Yes, please.
I have been saying bye to Jill from utilities in the city, and yesterday we had our farewell.
I'm exhausted.
Right. And and what I've been saying is that Jill is strong, she's tough, she's smart, and she's very committed. When I think about multimodal transportation and the bike lanes and the bike bikes and just all of that, she's bringing our city, she's into the future. You know, we're one of the city of Colorado Springs is the 38th largest city, and we keep growing. And Jill's been a real part of that. She's been a trailblazer, and she's been a really strong woman and a model for us on council. There's only two of us. I'm really jealous of the county commissioners, but there's only been two of us, and it's a different perspective that I think women bring to the table. I really appreciate her leadership as chair of PPACG and all the other things that she's chaired. So thank you, Jill, for all of your service to this great community.
Thank you, Yolanda, again. Hopefully this is the last time.
So that's great. So if I might ask from, I know that there was an event yesterday, I think it was late afternoon, kind of a welcoming event for new council members and a farewell event for other council members. Do I have that date right? Was it yesterday?
Yesterday was our last council meeting. And so for the 3 council members who are outgoing, there were a lot of goodbyes, and we had an event last night. The swearing in for the new council members will occur on the 20th. And you're all invited. It looks like it's going to be a great event. They're going to have it outside on the south lawn of the Pioneers Museum at 10 a.m., which is the required time by charter. So be there.
I do believe that the 5 county commissioners are going to be at that event. So we're looking forward to watching the new members get sworn in. Is there anybody else that would like to make comments in our farewell to Jill, which, to be fair, is a farewell in one respect and a welcome in another because of her new role that she'll have? Any other comments?
Chair, if I might, Lisa Hickey, Transportation Commissioner. I just wanted to say in my short term, I certainly have seen all that Jill has done on the PPACG. I, though, as a resident here for 40 years, have really appreciated all her leadership in all matters, but especially matters related to transportation in Colorado Springs. So we will miss that, but only because she's got to transition into a new phase. We will see more of Jill Gabler, I have no doubt. And I'm really glad and looking forward to it. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Commissioner. It has been a pleasure getting to know you. Lisa and I have started walking together. We're neighbors, and I look forward to continuing those conversations.
Outstanding. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Bremer.
Yes, please, Commissioner.
Thank you. Jill, you know, I've watched you for many, many years, and I had never had the opportunity to work with you directly on the same board, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity. I also think, you know, the leadership that you provided through the last rather unstable year was very stabilizing for the organization. And I just greatly appreciated learning from you. I'm glad that we could do that appointment and keep you on involved in some statewide transportation issues that will be pretty key to continuing to represent our region's interest. And I'm excited to see what's next for you and how you jump in and help our community as you always have, and honored to have finally had the opportunity to serve on the same board with you.
Thank you, Cammie. I feel the same about you. You are a calm and measured voice, and I so appreciate that about you and look forward to all that you're going to do in the future too with your female majority commission.
Thanks.
Outstanding. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, this is Norm.
Yes, please.
Hi, Jill, I just want to thank you. We worked together on the executive team for a bit and always appreciated your perspective. Teller County and El Paso and Colorado Springs, it's a great partnership. We're going to miss you. I hope we can cross paths again. I'm not sure what your next venture is, but if there's any way I can help or just kind of, you know, come alongside for anything you're working on, I really appreciate that. We're going to miss you. And thank you so much. I really appreciated your professionalism and your friendship. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. That means a great deal to me, and I'm really glad you're here today for my last day. And I too would love to find an opportunity for us to work together again.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Other comments?
Yeah, this is Dick Elsner. You know,
Cat.
yeah, when I joined the board, it was like, you know, University of Arizona ruled, and now Andy left and Jill is leaving. I'm not too sure I know how to act, but
you still have
I've
John.
really enjoyed. Yeah, but we need more. I have to go out and recruit. But you know, and I really have enjoyed working with you. I felt that. You know, with you as chair, we did have someone who was concerned about those of us that are out in the hinterlands and up in the hills that nobody really pays much attention to until we start screaming. And I didn't have to scream very much because you listened. So thank you for all your work, and go Lady Cats. I mean, yeah, they had a pretty phenomenal season.
They did. Thank you, Dick. That means a lot. And you know, it's just a hard year. Being chair and always having to do these meetings on the Zoom. So I hope this board can get together again and start hugging. That would, I think, help our communities working together a lot.
Great, thank you. Other comments? Okay, I see on the chat from Catherine Wenger, perhaps you all might have read it, but I'll just go ahead and state it. Thanks, Jill, for your support. Good luck on your next venture. You will be missed. And Brian Vituli has stated, thank you, Jill, for your support and leadership. And Patty Benger has stated, Mrs. Gabler, thank you for your dedicated service to the citizens of Colorado Springs. So we've got some great comments in the chat as well, which are awesome. And
Yes.
are there any other comments for Jill Gabler? I'd like to go ahead and finish then. And if there's any, thirds that want to finish up after I finish my comments, please make sure that you state so. But I just want to express my appreciation to Jill Gabler. We all know, because we are all in this business, it is not easy to put yourself out there in public domain, get yourself involved in being scrutinized, and then pushing policy issues that you feel very strongly about. And it's just an honor to work with Jill and everyone else that is willing to do this. So Jill, I want to express my personal appreciation to you for stepping up, taking on a difficult task, a tough task, standing firm on what you believe in. That's so important, and pressing forward. And really, you're staying in the game. It's not as an elected official, but it's in a different capacity. I know you're going to do a great job on the transportation board. But I just want to say thank you for your stepping up and putting yourself out there. Anybody that does that really deserves a congratulations, because it's not an easy job. So again, our appreciation to you also for your service on the PPACG board and the work that you've done for the jobs and things that we care deeply about. You've contributed in a great way to all of those things, and obviously have served on our leadership and as our chair. Did a great job in a tough year. So thank you also for all of that.
Thank you so much, Dan. That does mean so much to me. And can I speak for just a couple minutes? And
you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. When I came on 8 years ago, and I joined this board immediately, along with Andy Pico, and I think it was Don Knight at the onset. And honestly, I didn't appreciate the work that PPACG does, and it took me a couple of years to really realize the importance of the regional partnerships and the work that we accomplish. And ever since then, I've really tried to be actively participating. And with Andy coming on as the executive director, I mean, I've witnessed, along with all of you, the change in just the attitudes of the staff and the work that they're accomplishing together has just been so much more positive, and the working relationships seem very healthy. And I mean, I think that impacts our work too, and how we work together and all that we're accomplishing. And so I'm just anxious and eager to see all that PPACG will continue to accomplish under Andy's leadership, with the staff that he has built. John Leosatos, I can't say enough about how much I just think he's so fabulous. I mean, to figure out how to make a conversation about transportation dollars meaningful around chocolate is exactly what he does to help us to understand big concepts. And I so appreciate that. And those two gentlemen, Andy and John, together are really going, I think, to lead us into a great future where we, as the Pikes Peak region, really do get more of our fair share. We have a louder voice at CDOT. We've created and built some really strong relationships at CDOT that we didn't used to have. And that is very much due to Andy and the board members who are engaging. And I am really excited to continue to have a small role with all of you and be able to continue seeing you occasionally and working with you. And it was really just truly an honor to be a part of this board for the full 8 years of my council term. And I'm very grateful for the friendships and the relationships. And I love that our vision, our motto, whatever we call it, Andy, communities working together is so much more powerful than I ever realized when I came on board. But those regional partnerships are priceless. And I guess that's why I just think it's so important that we get back together as soon as possible, because those partnerships and relationships in our region are enhanced when we can really look each other in the eye and share our stories and find ways to work together. So thank you. I have enjoyed every minute of our time together, and I will just probably sit quietly today and try not to cry. So Thank you. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much, Jill. Awesome comments. And it is your last full board meeting, so if there's something on this conversation that you need to interject, please do so.
Okay.
Go right up to the last minute if you need to.
Thank you, Stan.
Again, thank you so much for your service and thank you for your comments. All right. Yeah, shall we go ahead and proceed forward with the consent items? Item number 4.
I
And we
think
have 3 of those. Yes, please.
pardon,
Go
I
ahead.
think there might have been one more public comment. I think Gail from Envita had emailed in.
Oh,
So
thank you. Let's
sure.
go ahead. Let's see. Do you have that, Jessica?
Gail, are you on the line by chance? I can read her note that she left if she's not on. She just wanted everyone to know that Envita is speaking this morning on an FTA Zoom meeting. They're an example on how we work to keep transit employees safe and how Envita established a COVID transit hotline for the community and provided access to vaccine sites. FEMA, TSA, Missoula Mountain, and Costa are the other participants on the panel hosted today by Cindy Terwilliger. That was her note. So I don't know if she's on to speak more about it, but there you go.
Okay, great. Just I'll just offer up if she is online, please feel free to turn on your mic and make a few other comments. And hearing none, I see also in the chat from Wayne Williams, just to make sure everybody hears the words from, he says, amen to the compliments of Jill and to her comments. So thank you for that, Wayne, appreciate it. Okay, let's now move on to item number 4, the consent items. We have 3. Approval of the minutes for the March 10, 2021 annual and regular meetings and the summary of financials and the membership appointments. Are there any comments or questions with regard to these consent items? And hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
This is Dick Elsner. I'll move to approve the consent items.
Holly
John Graham,
Williams.
I'll second.
Boy, you got to be fast this morning to get that second in, huh?
So I saw Holly starting to make one, but was that you, John, that made it?
Yeah, yes, it was, but certainly if you'd like to entertain Holly's second, that'd be fine.
I'll tell you what, we can do something different. For the record, let's have both Mr. Graham and Ms. Williams second the motion. 2 seconds. That'll be an interesting part of the record. Okay. So any other last comments or concerns? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and I vote aye as well. Are there any nays? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to item 5, action items. The first one is fiscal year 21 to 24 tip amendment number 11. Let's proceed.
Good morning, Catherine Wenger, Senior Transportation Planner, PPACG. And this is as you stated, tip amendment number 11 to our current FFY 21 through 24 tip. The tip, for anyone that might not know, is our short range transportation improvement program that lists any federal or state funds in the region in the next 4 years. And so every once in a while, we do need to update that document based on changes and updates per request of any members or CDOT, who also lists projects in this document. And so this is actually quite a few requests from CDOT so that we can align the TIP, which is the regional transportation improvement program, with the STIP, which is the statewide version. And so we have requests to make sure that our TIP matches that document. And then there is also one request from MMT to add a project to the document. So I'm going to go through through this table really quick as a quick summary, but feel free to stop me if you have questions so that you don't forget. All right, I'll go ahead and start. All right, so the first 2 are for adding state regional priority pool funds, which are part state, part federal. And that's for State Highway 21 corridor and US 24 at 31st Street intersection improvements. The next one is to add surface treatment funds, which are a mix of federal and state, to FY 21 and 22 for minor ramp rehabs on I-25 and North Academy, Briargate, Interquest, and then NORAD at 115. The next is to add funds, proceed at request for additional surface treatment funds for US 24 from Manitou Springs to West Chipeta Park. And then the next few projects are for removing the project due to activities occurring under another listing, or that it's a duplicate listing in the project. Sometimes CDOT combines projects for cost savings or for various reasons. And so we're making those updates to make sure there's not duplicates in the document. Those are for I-25 ramp repairs, the North Academy, Briargate, Interquest Parkway, US 24 West Manitou to West Chipeta Park Bridge, which was combined into the project above, State Highway 21 and Astor Zone Boulevard and Hancock Expressway signal replacements, US 24 West Mile Point 284 to 292 rehab. And then moving on to the next section or the next items are projects being removed due to COVID funding issues with the FASTER funds. There were, due to funds not being collected for license plate fees, we don't have the revenue for that. And so therefore the funds are the projects need to be removed because there's no funds there for that particular piece. And so those are for State Highway 85 at Maxwell Roundabout and State Highway 16 and Sneffels signal and intersection improvements, and US 24 at Academy Park Loop and US 24 at Mallard Drive, new signals, State Highway 115 at St. Elmo Avenue, Ramona Avenue, and Brookside signal replacements, State Highway 83 passing lanes, and that completes the one for the removing due to COVID issues. And then the next one is project funds adjusted due to updates and timing, staff workload, and funding availability. These are for the next three items, and they're all for the bill grant. The fundings haven't changed. It's just the timing and which fund type will go to which pieces of the project. So the funds are all staying there and everything's on time. It's just making sure that it's matching what we have, what CDOT has updated those to be. And then finally, to add that new project from MMT, they were awarded funds for a Academy Boulevard high capacity transit corridor study. And so they'd like to add that to the tip. And the TAC and CAC recommend approval. With that, I can take any questions.
Great. Are there any questions for Catherine? And
I have a question.
Yes, please, Sharon.
This is Sharon. I have a question, and it might not be for Catherine. I'm not sure who can answer it in this meeting, but I have been asked this question quite a bit of people within the area that are seeing people driving around with temporary license plates tags that have expired over a year ago. Now we're seeing that effect come down where we can't have a project funded because those fees were not collected. And I understand it has to do with the license plates not being manufactured, but the question I'm hearing from people is those people who have not paid those fees due to the license plates not being ready, do they just kind of, for lack of a better way to describe it, get away with not having to pay those fees for a whole year? Or what is going to happen when their license plates are ready? I don't know who has the answer to that question because I'm not finding it really a good explanation anywhere. Anybody want to take a stab at it, or?
Mr. Chair, this is Andy, and I don't know that we've got anybody on the line that can address that specifically. It's a good point. It's a good question. There's been some suspension temporarily of getting up to date with your registration fees and getting new fees paid, but we can check with folks at the state and the county and see if we can come back next month with some answers to that. It's a good question.
Yeah, and Andy, if you don't mind, I thank you for taking that on. As I'll just make a recommendation. Instead of waiting for next month's meeting, maybe if you could do the research and then just maybe send an email to the board with the answer so that we can kind of get an answer on it a little more quickly. And possibly a good place to do that would be to call one of the local DMV offices or call the county's clerk and recorder office. And because they run the DMV offices and they might have an answer that will be appropriate for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Happy to do that.
The joke kind of is if you and I drove around with it expired one day, we'd probably have a ticket, right? And so people are wondering why and what's going on. And I think they're just a little frustrated hearing the answer of, well, the license plate place got shut down for a while, but they're saying, well, I'm paying for my tags. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
Sharon, thanks for bringing it up. I didn't even know that was an issue. I have not myself seen an expired temporary tag, but I do know that DMV did operate all the way through COVID. They had to change their procedures, and
I don't
they
think
couldn't
it's the
run the same.
DMV. It's
Sorry?
it's my understanding the license plates are not available.
Yeah, I did not know that. So that'll be something worthwhile, Andy, if you could dig into that and find out.
So,
Thank
Catherine,
you,
I didn't
Sharon,
mean
for that.
to.
Oh, go
Catherine, I
ahead.
didn't mean to waylay your presentation, but it just kind of came up here. We're taking a project off because some of those fees haven't been collected. So
No, it's a good question because as elected officials, if we get an inquiry from a constituent, we probably should be able to answer that question. So I think that's a good thing to ask. Any other comments or questions? I have one, but I'll reserve it in case anybody else has comments.
And I was going to mention that you did have a couple questions at pre-board that we have answers for, but it sounds like if you want to go ahead and just ask those, we can answer them now.
Well, great. Actually, so I have one that I recall, and that was going to bring that up, and that was on the third item, the US 24 surface treatment. This is west of Manitou Springs to Chipeta Park, and this was an allocation of 1 million and change. And my question was, well, wait a minute, I think the surface treatment is completed. So what are we doing here? And you can correct me if I have this wrong, Catherine, but what we're voting on here is actually to have the books catch up to the work that's already been conducted. So is that accurate? I think that's the right response to that question that I had.
And it's my understanding that that's true. And I believe Shane Ferguson is on the line if he wants to add any, just to put him on the spot too, if he wants to add anything to that. That was my understanding.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that is correct. That project is complete, and this is truly just a updating the tip to reflect how the funding was actually allocated to what projects. It was originally a lot of the funding on the surface treatment side in particular was allocated or shown as corridor-wide funding versus a specific project. And so this really kind of cleans up where that funding went to a specific type of project. And so, yes, to answer your question, that project is complete. It is really essentially just a cleanup of the books.
And thank you very much for the, the additional comments on that point. I do want to actually just thank CDOT for doing that work. That road is in great shape. I've gotten compliments from constituents about fixing that road. And then, of course, having it also repainted, because a lot of the paint from the old roadbed was gone. I think having it all repainted, which you all did, of course, makes that road a lot safer going through that pass. So I think that was outstanding. You did that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Catherine, if you have a recollection of any of the other questions we had in the pre-board meeting, and then the response to them, please feel free to add those.
Sure. The other question that was asked was regarding the FASTER funds and how those projects are coming out due to the COVID funding issues, and when that might be being returned back to the region. And the response to that is we're not quite sure. And again, CDOT, feel free to jump in if you have, if you've heard any more, but I know that there's still some issues with getting those funds. And then recently at the STAC meeting, they were talking about those funds as well. And I didn't actually hear that part. So maybe John or Shane might be able to fill us in on that piece as far as the FASTER funds.
With respect to the STAC meeting, I cannot speak to that, but my understanding at this time is you're correct. We don't have a time frame as far as when those funds would be back and available, but obviously when we have more information, we will update the MPO and let you guys know when these projects can be put back on top.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah,
Oh, go ahead,
yeah,
John.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the only thing I can add is there are really two separate issues there. One is, again, the current collection of FASTR, since FASTR is collected when you do your registration. And so that, again, is just something that's out there that has to sort of have the administration catch up with everything. The second thing that was mentioned about STAC, that's actually a future question. If in fact, the funding proposal that's going to hit after the long bill is finished, from everything that we've been hearing with all the different fees, there is a provision in that where the FASTR funds would be, I believe, refunded or not collected for 2 years or something like that to sort of let things catch up. And the clarification at STAC was that was going to touch the state portion of those FASTR fees, not the county distribution of those FASTR fees. So that was just a clarification if the funding bill passes. But again, the state wouldn't necessarily miss those FASTR fees because they would be backfilled with all these new fees that would be collected from the bill. So two separate things, the current and future, and both of them are pretty much exactly what Catherine said. We have to sort of wait and see what happens as these things get sort of sorted out. So unfortunately, we don't have a real good answer for you at this point.
Great, thank you. All right, are there any other additional comments or questions with regard to this action item, the TIP Amendment 11? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. And don't all jump out at once now.
This is Sharon, move to approve.
All right.
John Graham Manitoul, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any last shot for any comments, questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and are there any nays? All right, that passes unanimously. Let's move on to 5B, the Transitioning Drive Smart Colorado Driver Safety Program to PPACG. And this will be an interesting topic for all.
It will. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll take this, I'll kick this off and then I'll hand it over to Laura Cruz to fill in some of the details. And this is going to take a few minutes to kind of work through this and look forward to a good conversation. Had a great conversation last week at the board workshop around this. And I'll kind of start with kind of the overarching request that we're looking for today. We're recommending that we as PPACG provide some leadership in transitioning and keeping Drive Smart Colorado going, and for lack of a better description, kind of under the umbrella and with support of PPACG. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means and what that might look like. But we think it's something that really fits very much within our mission at PPACG. It relates very closely with our strategic plan. Drive Smart Colorado has provided a ton of support and education around driver safety, traffic safety issues across the region for a number of decades now. And we found out the end of last year, we contracted with Drive Smart last year, and I'll get back to that in just a moment, but found out last year that they were basically closing their doors at the end of 2020 for a variety of reasons, partially related to the pandemic, largely related to the retirement of their awesome executive director, Miley Gray. She was stepping down at the end of 2020. So they were kind of at a point where they just really couldn't sustain the operation going forward, even though they had great board leadership and they had a great mission and had done some fantastic work. So they approached us about the possibility of having PPACG provide some support and keep the organization sustaining and continuing to operate. So that's kind of the request that we have today, is to approve in concept the transition of Drive Smart Colorado as a separate nonprofit 501c3 to continue to operate as a 501c3, but under the auspices or under the umbrella with a little bit of support, board support for Drive Smart Colorado to keep it going. Just a few other comments. We've talked a little bit in the past within PPACG, I think with the board a little bit as we're developing the strategic plan, but then also in other contexts about the possibility of setting up a nonprofit where it makes sense to help provide some support and augment some of the programs that we have in place within PPACG. The benefit of having a separate nonprofit is that a nonprofit can also often go after grants and other funds like foundation funds that we as a quasi-governmental entity at PPACG can't go after. So there's some cross purposes there where it might assist having a separate nonprofit kind of augment some of the work we're doing by going after other funding sources that may help support efforts that that we're trying to lead. And this is a great example of that under traffic safety that deals with our transportation program, and even within our aging program as well, helping senior travelers get safely around the region and dealing with senior drivers and so forth. So like I mentioned, we contracted with DriveSmart last year for a campaign around traveler safety. Did some outstanding work there with them and really a pretty robust social media campaign. So when it came up that there was a possibility that as they were closing their doors, they may not continue operating, we've started researching it and kind of have been doing our due diligence over the past couple of months. We ran it by our attorney to find out what kind of risks might be involved. And the advice that we got back was that as long as there's separation, that it wasn't something operating, truly within PPACG, but was operating as a separate nonprofit with a separate board and a separate budget, that would be fine. That we can create that separation, and that should work out fine and should minimize any risks that we would have. So that's our recommendation today, to approve in concept moving forward, to provide some level of support that's necessary to keep DriveSmart Colorado operating. And we'll talk a little bit more about board structure and things like that in this morning's conversation. But with that, let me hand it over to Laura, and she can fill in some more details and we can get into some Q&A.
Yes, thanks, Andy. Laura Cruz, Mobility Coordinator for the AAA. And Andy kicked this off pretty well. So, some great opportunities that we have to essentially keep working with an organization that we have been working with for years. Miley Gray, who was the executive director, was also very instrumental in helping out with the mobility coordinating committee, and it just DriveSmart Colorado's activities meshed very well with the MPO as well as the AAA for years. So with this opportunity, as Andy mentioned, we really took some time to explore different options of being able to partner with or continue DriveSmart Colorado's programs. And so those three opportunities that we identified was either taking over the leadership of the existing nonprofit. PPACG could also start our own 501c3, or PPACG could implement limited programming under our current MPO structure in AAA. So as Andy said, we kind of took the approach of looking at it from the perspective of what's the financial risk as well as the legal risk to the organization. And we did consult with outside counsel, but we also consulted with the Center for Nonprofits just to better understand what a transition would look like for an organization like this. And in looking at those three options of carrying on DriveSmart Colorado, we wanted to understand what those risks were, but also the timing of being able to continue and keep the name going in the community. And so in looking at those risks as well as the timing, taking on the existing nonprofit seemed to be the best fit for us, as well as just giving us more of an opportunity in the future for finding funding opportunities for the organization and the program. And as Andy mentioned, one of the big pluses of being able to associate with the 501c3 is the ability to apply for funding that otherwise us as a quasi-government agency would not be able to apply for. And so it gives us some more funding, explorations that we can tackle. There's also been several grants that have supported this organization year over year, and those funders are interested in understanding how those programs that they have been funding are going to continue. So us being able to come to you today with this option of of taking on leadership role of the nonprofit. And we have further kind of defined what that leadership role is. Really, PPACG would be the physical location of the organization. So they have closed their offices, and we would become the physical location of the organization under the IRS, as well as the Secretary of State. We would also have the opportunity to make some changes to the bylaws, and these are some things that we've talked about with their board leadership. But make some changes to the bylaws to create more of a blended board between PPACG staff, PPACG board members, and the current board members of the organization. So there's still some great interest with the current board members to continue serving the organization. And just to let you know a little bit about their current structure, many of the board members are local law enforcement individuals who are heavily interested in traffic safety and eager to make for sure that there's programming to support the efforts that they do on a day-to-day basis. And that structure is, those board members are actually not a appointment. So say for instance, a new sheriff comes in town, they have to be a part of the board. What it is those that are a part of the board actually make recommendations of board members, just like a traditional nonprofit. So it isn't an appointed board. So it gives us some flexibility to work within the current board structure to incorporate some of our staff, as well as you all who are interested. Lastly, I think what has been very interesting to us as staff as we have been working on this is talking through some of the ways that we can carry on Drive Smart programs just within our current structure. John made mention of something in a meeting we were talking about a few weeks ago, and he said, Drive Smart's not the only name of doing safety training. PPACG is also a traffic safety training organization. And so while we transition this organization, we already are doing a lot of the things that Drive Smart Colorado was doing. So this is just to help supplement and help support and carry on what they were currently doing and incorporating some of those great activities that they were doing into our current work. Are there any questions so far?
Are there any questions from the board so far with regard to this item? All right, Laura, if you've got more, go ahead and proceed.
Yeah, so your approval of today of us moving forward with this concept of taking on the leadership of this organization really kicks off the transition. Their board is eagerly awaiting y'all's response to this measure, and then they will take y'all's response and then also do a resolution within themselves as supporting PPACG as the leadership of the organization. And so those two letters and resolutions will help us with the transitional piece and the administrative piece of working with the Secretary of State and the IRS to fully transition to the organization and the physical entity under PPACG.
Great, thank you. And I'll mention, after I give other people an opportunity to ask other questions, I'll mention some of the questions that I had for Andy and what I think the responses are, so you all can hear those. But does anybody have any other questions on this item right now? Okay, great.
I have a
yes, please,
question.
Sharon, go ahead.
Just maybe more of a comment. I think it's going to be important under the board structure that PPACG does have a member of the board on there. I don't know if how it would come out, if it's an elected person or a staff person, but I just think that would be an important addition to the bylaws.
Absolutely. And our picture, our vision is that it would be board members from the PPACG board. We're hoping that there's interest in doing that. And that's what Laura meant by describing sort of a blended board. But if we can get a couple of existing Drive Smart Colorado board members from law enforcement, I know the police chief of City of Colorado Springs, the sheriff for El Paso County, I believe the police chief for City of Fountain may be on there as well, but it would be nice to have a blend of existing Drive Smart law enforcement folks, especially a couple of members from our PPACG board for that cross-pollination, and maybe a staff member or two as well to help support that effort. So that's definitely our view, and what we would do is bring that back at a subsequent meeting to kind of flesh out what the bylaws changes would look like and what the board structure would be as well.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions? Okay, so hearing none, but feel free to chime in if you do. Some of my comments, the very first thing that I asked when Andy gave me a call and asked me about this was, hey, let's just make sure if we do take this on, that we don't otherwise, violate our own bylaws and PPACG, get ourselves into some kind of trouble by doing something that we're really not set up to do. And Andy, I believe you had your staff check into that. I think you had at least a short conversation with legal counsel, and there did not seem to be anything that was going to make this problematic for us, which correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was your response to that point.
That's correct. No challenges, conflicts in terms of our board bylaws. Checked with our attorney is Evan Withrow, separate legal counsel, and his main recommendation was that let's just keep things separate as far as the separate boards. It's going to be a separate Drive Smart board that happens to have some members of the PPACG board serving on there, along with some of the existing Drive Smart members. But keeping that board separate would have a separate budget. And we can keep that separation in place for sure. That's not a problem. But there were no conflicts as far as the current PPACG board bylaws.
Great. And then, I kind of see this as an opportunity. First of all, I'll make the point that the branding of Drive Smart Colorado is an excellent brand. It's fairly well known in a lot of places, actually across Colorado. And I think there are other Drive Smart organizations in other parts of Colorado, but this one supports our region. And so Drive Smart Colorado is just a good name, I think, to be able to offer, training and safety seminars and all kinds of different programming. And then I think the idea or the knowledge that we do some of this already in PPACG and Drive Smart Colorado does this, the opportunity to have us a little bit more connected, I think gives us opportunities to perhaps increase programming, to increase driving safety and driving safety awareness within the region, and maybe improve on efficiencies a little bit, which I think that's a really great thing for us to work on. And then the idea about what would this look like from a structure after we finish the design. I think it's important to mention that we're not, and Andy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that isn't really being offered to our board today. What is being asked is if, does this board approve this in concept about bringing this under the PPACG umbrella with the appropriate stated caveats of legal separation and so forth, so we can be legal with it. And then the other nuts and bolts and details, there's some things that'll have to be worked out. But the idea of a blended board is the general concept today. And that might mean, there's still members on the Drive Smart Colorado board that want to stay on the board. And it's appropriate to have law enforcement on that board because, they've got resources and places where they can work on driver safety awareness. And then we would have some members from our board, and probably more than one, but probably also not a majority of members on the Drive Smart board. And that's just a generalized statement without an exact number that's known today. But that would be kind of how we would blend the board. So those things will be conversations that will come subsequent to this about how we finalize that design. And then I'll make one last point. Andy, again, you can correct me if I don't have this exactly right. The current Drive Smart board is waiting to see what we do in this activity here. If we vote in favor of this, they'll be, I think, first of all, they'd be very excited about that and pleased. And then they will have an interest in not disbanding, but changing. And then falling under our umbrella and continuing this operation of Drive Smart Colorado and also staying on the board. If we were to reject this, they may in fact take a different approach and just disband, I think is where that will go. So, so that's kind of what's in front of us today for our board consideration. Did I get that all right, Andy?
All well said. Couldn't have said
All
it
right.
myself. Yeah, they would simply disband. If they didn't see any interest by PPACG, they're just going to file their final paperwork and then they would just go away. And that was our concern, losing the name recognition, the good work that they've done, losing the momentum. And so I think it'd be a really good expression of support, or not even just an expression of support, but showing that we're going to take the next step with approval today to move forward in concept. That will help us recruit and retain some of the existing board members and then get it blended and come back at a subsequent meeting, like you mentioned, with a proposal around the bylaws changes and the board composition changes. So yes, that was all well said.
Great, thank you. So at this point, are there any other questions or concerns?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Brimmer.
Yes, Commissioner, go ahead.
I don't have questions or concern. I'm actually quite excited about the opportunity. We talk about partners all the time, and we work very closely with outside organizations, but very few of them, they may be performing a certain subset of kind of our mission or one of our objectives. I feel like this is one area of transportation safety that we haven't really, we have goals and objectives based on improving overall motor vehicle safety and roadway safety. But this to me is a huge opportunity to ensure that the objectives that we've identified as issues, as problems that we want to address, this is a great way for us to ensure that those objectives can actually, that we have a mechanism through which they're being accomplished. And in many cases, outside partnerships and, such as Drive Smart as a standalone or Silver Key as a standalone. I think that it's great to have outside nonprofit partners. But this is one area that I think that it behooves our organization to be more involved in and to step up and actually be able to have an impact on metrics in a way that feeds back into what our objectives are year over year in the transportation safety world. So I'm excited about the opportunity. I think it's wonderful, and I think I'm very satisfied with the kind of external nonprofit setup. But it is the dovetailing of what this organization actually tries to do in this world is amazing, and I think it's a great opportunity.
Great, thank you very much. Other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on this item, item 5B.
Yolanda, move to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Brimmer, second.
Thank you, Yolanda and Cami, for the motion and the second. Any other last comments or questions?
Mr. Chair, if I could just clarify as well, there is a resolution in the board packet, very simply stated, very straightforward. I think it's a one page with a couple of paragraphs. So if that was inferred that that's part of the motion, the resolution by the board to approve PPACG assumption of leadership over the existing nonprofit Drive Smart Colorado. If that was assumed, that would be super.
That was assumed.
Thank you.
Andy.
Outstanding. And I'll assume then the second also includes that. Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Outstanding. Thank you, Andy, for bringing that point up. So any other comments or questions? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And are there any opposed? All right. That passes unanimously. Thank you for the great work, Andy and PPACG team. We get to hold on to that Drive Smart Colorado brand, team up a little bit better, and possibly get even better in the programming on driving safety in our community. And we all know how important that is. So thank you very much for putting that together and finding that opportunity for us.
Sure.
Let's,
Thank you much. We'll be back. Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Let's go ahead now to 5C, which is the legislative update.
Good morning, board members. Jessica McMullen. I am here to update you a little bit on what's been going on with the legislative session. As you know, there is a lot moving. So real quick, I'm going to ask, does anybody have any questions about the bills that are on our dossier on state bill that I gave you the link to? If not, I will just give you a quick rundown of what bills that are new from our last board meeting and ask our legislative committee members to chime in with anything they'd like to add. Okay.
I think you have your answer, Jessica. Go ahead.
And again, ask me any questions as I speak. You guys know I go quick. So bills that are new from March 10th, that was our last meeting. We are proposing to support Senate Bill 21-149. It was a wind energy facilities sited near military operations. This one is way less pertinent. It died on the 23rd. House Bill 21-1227 is Medicaid nursing facilities, demonstrations of need. It's concerning helping nursing and assisted living facilities with their Medicaid funding. We would like to support it, but it's not one we're going to heavily engage on. The state ombudsman office is supporting it. There are advocates for seniors in assisted living and home care facilities. It passed the House Health and Insurance Committee and is on the House second reading, although not yet on the calendar. We are suggesting to monitor Senate Bill 21-204, Rural Economic Development Initiative Grant Funding Program. It's assigned to the Senate Local Government Committee, not on the calendar. Senate Bill 21-200, reduce greenhouse gases to increase environmental justice. This one is scheduled in the House Transportation Committee on 4/20. We are looking into it a little bit more and we're monitoring this one pretty closely to see what it does. There's some potential for it. So you may hear from us again about Senate Bill 200. House Bill 21-1231, it's the United States Space Force. It's authorizing Colorado National Guard and statutory references and branches of the United States Armed Forces. It's assigned to the House State Affairs Committee, not on the calendar. Senate Bill 21-183, Law Enforcement Support and Accountability. It's got some local sponsors. Our position again is monitor. It's assigned to the Senate State Affairs Committee. House Bill 1250, measures to address law enforcement accountability. Very similar, but does not have any local sponsors. Our proposed position again is monitor. It's scheduled for Wednesday, April the 21st. It's the only one we've got on the calendar. We reviewed a couple of other bills and found them to be not PPACG issues. Senate Bill 229, Rural Jumpstart Zone Grant Program, and House Bill 1253, Renewable and Clean Energy Project Grants. Does anybody have questions on those, or does my legislative committee have any comments they'd like to add?
Yeah, this is Dick Elsner. I think there's another bill that just was introduced that people might be interested in looking at. Seems now it's a month away before we go through this again. It's House Bill 21-1271. It is a grant proposal associated with affordable housing. And going through it, basically, the goal of the bill is to encourage local governments to make changes to their land use regulation or, any of the regulations around housing to encourage the construction of affordable housing. It's 24 pages. It's got all kinds of stuff in it, but it's something that people might be interested in looking at. I think if you don't have some of what they're proposing already incorporated as part of your land use regulations or your regulations, I think you might want to consider it, because, the whole idea is to try to figure out, how do we create affordable housing? This allows some money out of the state to help with studies and help with things that when you start changing your regulations, I think it could be of interest to quite a few places. And I think that's the only one that I have to add that people should look at. I don't know if it's on our bill tracker, but I think we can have it added pretty quick so people can get to it. And I do really encourage everybody to look at that bill tracker. There are quite a few bills there. It gives the status of them. If there's any that you are particularly interested in, you can go down and testify. If you don't feel comfortable with that, contact Jessica or contact Sharon or me, and we can work through how that can be done in order to make sure that the legislature understands PPACG's positions and hears from us. The state legislature seems to be pretty Denver centric, and having people from Colorado Springs go up and remind them that we are a very large area with a lot of people, and they really need to start looking at the rest of us rather than just the Denver metro area.
Thank you, Dick. I'll echo that comment. I think the legislative team and the PPACG staff has done a really good job at creating a document that's easy to review, get some basic understanding about different bills, and then see the either approved or proposed position of PPACG on that bill. So if you haven't had an opportunity to go through that, I would highly recommend you do that. And it's my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's any bills on that list that we're opposing at this point in time. It's either support or monitor are the two overall general positions that we have at present. And I think the primary rationale for that is that we are only looking at bills that kind of are in the PPACG mission lane. And when we're looking at those the bills that are being proposed, and we're thinking in that context, that's kind of why we've ended up where we've ended up with nothing in opposition.
That's correct.
And thank you. And Dick, I appreciate you bringing up that one bill. I think I'll have an interest in that. There's the land use code that we have we make a lot of changes to, and many of us have our own land use code. But then there's also the building code side, which I find it interesting. The building code is actually prescriptive in nature, which means if it's not specifically identified in the code, you can't use it as a building material. I think that actually damages the opportunities for innovation in building homes. But the problem is the building code is so complex. It's often way beyond the capacity of a county jurisdiction to really do anything about it. So most of us just simply adopt the national code and don't really make too many changes to it. So Dick, do you know if this grant concept would be both land use code and building code, or just land use?
From what I understand in reading it and a discussion we had a couple of days ago, I think changing building code is an area that if it encourages affordable housing and construction that way, I think it would be part of this, and you could get a grant to help with a study of the building codes. I know Park County is looking at moving to a new building code, and one of the things that we want to look at is trying to figure out what the new code does as far as size of buildings and everything. The 2012 code made it very difficult to have a small dwelling. That is, tiny homes and all of those. Right. The code didn't allow it. That was relaxed, I believe, in 2016 and 2018. It goes quite a little bit further to help with that. I also think, I know 2012 had the energy code coupled with it. My understanding is, and I haven't verified it yet, that 2018 decouples the energy code from the building code, which again will allow different construction methods on very small houses. So, you know, yes, my understanding, and that's, I think the goal of the authors was to try to give incentives for counties and municipalities to change their codes to make it easier for people to build affordable housing.
Thank you, Dick. I know that's true. And your comment about tiny homes, you know, we enacted tiny home legislation in El Paso County in December of 17. But the way the current building code is written, they ended up having to build a completely new section for tiny homes because there was no way for them to integrate the innovation of a tiny home into the existing code that is typically applied to a stick-built home. So they had to build a whole new section. Well, now we've got a big bureaucracy in that section as well, and it's hard to comply with. And of course, it's the builders that have to work on that compliance. I just think really the building code, it's time for the building code to be really revamped in detail, but that is often beyond the capacity of a county to do. So, you know, I think that might be an interesting bill being introduced to provide some funding for counties to, you know, figure out a way to add innovation into building products that they're trying to get to in their county. So thank you for bringing that up. Are there any other comments or questions with regard to this item on the legislative update? And if I could just ask for clarification. So this is an action item to vote on it. We have some items on the tracker that have new positions, and we're asking to vote on those. Okay.
We're asking for confirmation of the board on the PPACG Legislative Committee's proposed positions.
Okay. I don't, at the risk of this taking some time, does any of the board members want to hear a little bit about the new positions that are presently identified in that tracker, so you can hear it here in this board meeting, or are we ready to go forward with a vote to go forward with a vote?
Well, I would make the motion that we approve the positions that we have on the tracker. And then, you know, once it's approved, if someone then does do a deep dive into something and questions it, you know, we can always bring it back to the legislative committee, take another look, take their concerns, and then change our position that way with a quick email to members of the board saying, you know, we have this concern. We had someone who didn't like what we did, so we're going to change our position.
I'll second that. I do want to point out the legislative committee meets every Monday morning at 8:30. It is a good way to keep up on the legislation. I have missed a couple meetings, but they really go into the bills. And so I would encourage everybody to try and attend if they are able to, because it is kind of fascinating, to me at least. So I would support Dick's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? Or does anybody else need to hear anything else about what's on our tracker and our positions? Okay, hearing none, it sounds like the board is ready to vote. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously as well. Thank you, everybody, for that. We're through the voting items for this PPACG meeting. Let's move on to number 6, the information items. Did I hear comments?
Mr. Chair, if I can interrupt for just a second, the 4 information items in front of you should be pretty brief, so just hang in there. We'll get through this fairly quickly. But related back to the legislative committee, I just wanted to point out now that for your meeting this coming Monday, the 19th at 8:30. We're going to have a special guest there. So if others on the board want to come to the meeting, would certainly encourage that, and we can get out the meeting link to everybody. But we're going to have a representative from the National Association of Regional Councils, who's an expert around federal transportation funding, come and brief the committee on what's happening as far as both the administration's infrastructure proposal that we've heard a lot about, and then also about what the prospects might be for a federal transportation bill being authorized by Congress this year. The current one expires by October 1st of this year. So he's going to really give us a good overview of what's happening federally with those transportation and infrastructure initiatives. And he's also a really good expert resource about what's happening in other states around transportation funding as well. So just wanted to put that out there. Guest speaker, Mr. Eric Zimmerman, this coming Monday at 8:30, and we'll get the Zoom link out.
Great. Thanks for making sure we're aware of that, because having an expert like that, I don't know myself, but based on what you said, having an expert like that, that probably would be a really interesting conversation. So now I think you've got me incentivized to go to the 8:30 Monday morning meeting. All right. Thank you for that update. Let's now move on to item number 6, the fiscal year 2022 to 2025 TIP draft.
So Catherine Wenger, PPACG. This is an item or information item, to discuss the upcoming Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, for fiscal years 22 through 25. Last month, I brought you a schedule that discussed how we were going to be adopting 2 TIPs pretty much back to back, due to trying to be in alignment with the state STIP. And this is how we're going to do it, is by adopting 2 TIPs back to back. So this TIP that we're adopting now, or not yet, but in progress of adopting, is for the 22 through 25 years. And this it will take the years from 22 and 23 and 24 from the current TIP, move them into this document, and then we added year 25 for the CDOT projects. And then, as it mentions in the memo, the STP Metro and TAP funds that we allocate from the region won't be added until the next TIP that you'll see coming through later this fall. And so the draft document link is in this memo as well, and for you to review. And this would be the TIP document. It outlines all the projects in the region for those 4 years, and just the general outline of what the TIP is and the processes. And so before this goes to final approval, we take it through the committees for review. We have you release it to the public, and then we let the public have a chance to comment for 30 days. And then we bring it back to you with any comments that we receive, and to give you opportunity to make any updates you might see that are needed based on those comments, or any other updates you might need. And then finally, we bring it back to you for a final adoption, or a public hearing, and then final adoption. And so all that will be occurring this summer. So this is just for information for you to review the document. Next month, I'll bringing it back to you for public release. And so far, we haven't received any comments from the TAC or the CAC for changes. So they feel that it's good to go for moving forward for public release. And that, I can take any questions.
Great. Are there any questions for Catherine? I have one quick one for you, Catherine. Did I hear right that there'll be another opportunity for this board to review it? And that obviously would be the May meeting, and before it goes to public release?
So right now you'll have about 30 days until the next board meeting to review and make any comments before the public release, before you officially release it to the public. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I do see on the document that the draft for public release is listed as the second bullet in April, but that doesn't mean it gets released in April. This board will have another opportunity to provide input and comments, and then it will get released in May. I'm just wanting to get clear on what's on the page.
Yes, sorry, I should have been more clear. In April is the TIP draft for public release, is the recommendations from TAC and CAC. So they're actually going to start seeing, they've already had the 30 days to see this document and make comments. And so they're going to start the process of actually making that recommendation for you to release it to the public, but it won't be official until it goes to the board in May. And so, sorry about that. I should be more
Right.
clear, but yes.
Yeah, thank you. So I would encourage our board to pull up this link and go through this draft document in detail and make sure that you get comments in so that we're aware if you have any concerns or worries, because I guess at next month's board meeting, that's probably when we'll be voting on it, I would believe. Is that accurate? We'd be voting to allow it to release. Is that a voting item, Andy, or is it just going to be another information item?
That's a good question. Catherine, does the board need to vote to approve to release for public comment? I suspect they probably do.
Yes, yes, we do ask for formal approval to release it to the public.
Okay, great. So I would ask this board then to go through a review and either submit those comments in advance or be prepared at the next board meeting to offer your comments so that we can work through those. All right, great. Any other questions or comments on this item? All right, hearing none, let's move on to the next item. Thank you, Catherine, I appreciate it. This is the federal fiscal year, item 6B, federal fiscal year 22-23 UPWP draft.
Hey, it's Catherine Wenger again, PPACG. It's our busy month. So this is a draft document for our fiscal year, or excuse me, federal fiscal year actually, 2022 and 2023 UPWP, or our Unified Planning Work Program. This is a federally required document that we are required as an MPO to develop. It lists all of our transportation planning activities that will occur in our MPO area. So that smaller border, not the full PPACG boundary. And so at a minimum, we have to include a description of our planning work and the resulting projects, who will perform the work. Mostly it's PPACG, but we also list MMT and CDOT. And then also timeframes for completing the work, the cost of those work, and any sources of funds. And then also we list any activities that were completed based on the last UPWP. So we also outline that as well. So per regulations, we are required to develop a new UPWP every 2 years, but typically we do kind of a mid-cycle update every 1 year. But this year is the full new adoption. And that's why we were bringing you this draft. And we actually made some pretty significant changes to this document, as you've seen it, than you have seen in previous years. It's not very dramatic, but there are some moving pieces that we've changed, and it's outlined in these bullet point or these numbered points, and I'll briefly go over those. So we did add a public outreach and involvement language on page 6. This was a request from our federal partners to make sure that we clearly state that this document is made available to the public, and how we post it, and how we make sure that they are aware of the activities we're doing and the ones that are being complete. So that outlines that on page 6. Then we also add, removed, excuse me, our previous UPWP accomplishments that I mentioned, that we have to talk about what we accomplished from our last UPWP. And we moved that into its own section and moved it up forward. So it's not something new, it's just moved into its own section starting on page 12. Then we combined the expenditure tables into one for each fiscal year. Instead of we had expenditure tables for each of our work elements, we combined it into one to make it more clear, the revenues and the expenditures per work element. And then finally, we also reorganized our work element numbers and associated tasks. So the work element and associated tasks tie our financial numbers, our work elements, to what tasks that we bill to. So each of our staff members bill to a certain number, which identifies what type of work we've been doing. And so we previously had other numbers in our actually it's still our current UPWP until this one gets adopted. And we are recommending that we change those so that it's more clear and just easier to kind of identify those in our document and for billing purposes. So we combined 600 and 601, which was previously two and we combined it into one and just called it administrative and coordination. And so that's a lot of the administration and management activities that we do. And then we also combined 602 and 603 into 611. And this is for GIS and modeling. Previously, it was GIS and modeling separate, but there's tons of overlap there, and it didn't really make sense to have those separate. So we combined those in and called it data management. And then we update, because we're updating our numbers to start at 610 instead of 600 for accounting purposes, we moved 604 is now 612 for the tip. The 605 is now going to be 613 for our long range transportation plan. 606 is now 614 for our environmental transportation planning purposes. 615 is a new item that we added for specialized mobility services. Also 5310, since that we are, PPACG is now the designated recipient of those funds. And then we also added a new 616 for safety activities. Previously, we were doing those activities all along, but they were under kind of a 600 or 601. And so we wanted to call those out specifically and put that into its own section. And then finally, 607 is now 617. And it's for our direct expenditures, things like contract services and other things like that. So the draft document can actually be found at the link provided. And if you have any feedback, you can email me, please, by April 29th. This is just an information item for you this month, and next month we'll be bringing it back to you for adoption. And then this document would go into effect starting October 1, or the start of the next federal fiscal year. And yeah, any questions for that?
Great, Catherine. Any questions on this item? Good rundown on the changes. I appreciate that. And again, kind of similar to the item 6A for the 6B here. Again, it is a draft. And Catherine is asking that if anybody has any comments or feedback on this document, to provide that to her by April 29th. I assume that's to get those inputs ready for next month's board meeting, where we will go through a vote to adopt or wherever we go. So that's great to hear. So this is another document that we need our board to take a look at and make sure that it is structured and worded the way we're comfortable.
Stan?
Yes, please.
This
Mr.
way,
Williams.
I do have a question on it. When you go into and this is on the link to the transportation, let's see what's called the draft for TIP program of projects, where it says list all projects in the TIP. What is the order that's in?
I'm sorry, are you on the previous item?
I am. I apologize. It took me a while to.
Okay.
I'm also trying to get an answer to the motor vehicle question. And I've got one that I'll share later today.
Could you repeat your questions? I just want to make sure I think they're right.
When you go to the webpage and one of the links is draft TIP program of projects.
Yeah.
What's the order they're in?
Let me see. Okay.
Because it looks like it might be by project numbers, which I have to say from a user standpoint, that's not useful. And I don't know if there's maybe a way to do, as we seek public input here, putting the projects in some form of order, or maybe having an opening page that says these are trail projects, these are transit projects.
Who did the design work on Barnes?
There's somebody whose mic is open. If you could mute your mic, please.
Airport, wasn't that designed by Wilson?
Yes.
And then who, are we self-performing that CM?
There's someone else who can mute her.
Yeah, hang on just a second. Thank you, Wayne, for the comments, but hang on just a second.
MV5, right?
MV5, yeah.
I believe there's somebody, I don't know who it is, listed as D2 voter. Can you hear us?
All right, no, that gives the answer. I was just trying to compare the CM costs. with Centennial for like 30.
Whoever's got the master should be able to mute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could we have somebody mute the D2 voter?
No.
Or just
But
mute
there's
everybody
actually
and
a
then
higher
those that need
range.
to
Of
talk can
course,
come
that
back
flat
on?
one's still super high. Even with Wilson, I'm like super, super high. In bases and AECOM kind of seem to be right in the about the same. So it's kind of interesting in that 12 to 14.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
So,
All right, Wayne, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so the suggestion is let's put an index or a table of contents at the beginning of that page that where those who are interested in trails, those who are interested in transit, can see the list of projects as opposed to scrolling through the entire one on that tab. So that's my suggestion.
Yes. And thank you for bringing that up. We actually are in the process of transitioning to a new electronic tip database where came from. And I'm working with that company to make sure that the report output is comes out in an order rather than just shoots out all the projects. And so they're implementing that now, and I'll make sure that before it goes to the public, it's in an order that kind of, typically we do it by jurisdiction. And so it separates it that way, but I'm happy to make sure that it comes out in a more user-friendly way.
Thanks. Yeah, scrolling through a couple hundred pages to find your project is a little challenging, so I appreciate it.
Thank you, Wayne, for your input, and thank you, Catherine, for accepting that and working towards a modification to make that easier for really both this board and the public to review the list. So, Wayne, did you have anything else?
I do have a little bit of an answer with respect to the license plate expiration question that was asked earlier.
Why don't we go ahead with that at this point, and then we'll get back to the information items.
Okay, so here's the requirement. You're still required to plate and have those processes. There is a letter that I sent to Jessica that some people may have received that they can show law enforcement. My understanding is, at least in the two largest jurisdictions, and I didn't get a hold of everyone, but in El Paso County, they are allowing some grace. Yeah, here's the letter. So in El Paso County, they're allowing, in the sheriff's office, they're allowing some grace. But if someone is significantly out of date, they will, under officer discretion, still ticket. El Paso or Colorado Springs Police are giving you an additional 30 days, essentially. But again, if it's, the year out of date that Sharon was asking about, you will get ticketed in the city of Colorado Springs. And so I think that's a question for each of the other jurisdictions with respect to their police departments. Certainly, there is an issue, and it's been something with respect to the Department of Revenue, but you do have still an obligation. And ultimately, when you do plate, you will pay all back fees. What you will not plate, or what you will not be charged, is the late fees. And they've waived those for a period of time. By the way, that waiver, in terms of county revenues, some of which were shared with others, according to the Motor Vehicle Department, is $1.475 million of waived late fees and related things. So there is a impact both with respect to funding and a delay with respect to funding. But ultimately, everyone is still going to have to pay for that time period during which they had that grace, but just not the late fee portion. So that's the quick answer based on the conversations with the clerk, the sheriff's office, and the police department.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the update. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Sharon, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Wayne. I appreciate that. Yeah, because the ones I'm seeing and people are telling me about are significantly out of date. If I could get a copy of that letter, that would be great. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And then if you can share it, Jessica, if you can just share that to the whole board. And then Sharon, you might want to have the conversation with Fountain PD to see what their process is there.
Yeah. And, yeah, I think we're all erring on the side of grace, yeah, but people want to make sure that people are going to be paying those fees for our roads. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And it does sound like there is some grace in this kind of, at least the example here that Wayne brought up is 30 days. But I guess if anybody's got a expired temporary plate and it's a year or 6 months, I would imagine, knowing what Wayne just said, that probably is somebody that needs to be ticketed. So,
Yeah, and we've actually stepped up some enforcement in Colorado Springs Police Department on that.
Okay, great. Thank you for the update, Wayne. Appreciate it. Going back then to the item 6B, I think we may be concluded with that, but I'll just open up the floor in case there's any other questions on it right now. All right, don't forget to provide any inputs and updates to Catherine by 29 April on item 6B. All right, let's go to 6C, TIP policies and procedures update.
All right. Final item for me, I promise, for today. All right, Catherine Wenger, PPACG. This is a update to our Transportation Improvement Program policies and procedures document. Usually, typically before a new TIP adoption process begins, or before we start doing a new call for projects, which we will be doing in the coming months, we do a review of our TIP policies and procedures, make sure there aren't any updates. And for this round, there was recommendations from PPACG staff to kind of make sure that the process, once projects have been allocated funds in the TIP, that we make sure that the process continues and that we are able to obligate the funds on time, or the project, the year that the project is listed. And so these changes that we're recommending are based on that and creating a process that will help keep those projects moving. And so essentially most of these changes are recommendations that the PPACG staff will have to follow to make sure that, or to help in that process. And so we didn't receive any other recommendations from TAC or CAC to make updates. They feel that the document, that update that we did a couple years ago, is still has all the other aspects that it needs in there. So the recommendations have been added to pages 11 and 12. And I'll just do a quick outline of what those recommendations are. It follows a kind of a sequence for this section. So PPACG will send out an initial letter and an email of the awarded project, or a notice of inclusion in the TIP, and outline of the jurisdiction responsibilities, which are outlined in the TIP policies and procedures document. And then about 6 months prior to the fiscal year that the project is listed in, PPACG will send out an email to inform the jurisdictions of upcoming project funds and forms to get the project started, and make sure that they're sent to the jurisdiction. Then they'll check back, PPACG will check back again about 3 months prior to that fiscal year the project is listed, ensure that the forms are complete or are in the progress of being completed. And then PPACG will recommend a quarterly check-in meetings on project status with PPACG and CDOT. And so this will be on PPACG to initiate those, to make sure that the process is still moving. And then about 6 months prior to the end of the fiscal year that the project is listed, there'll be an evaluation of progress to determine if the project needs to return funds or possibly needs to be rolled forward. Typically, they're rolled forward to give the project a little bit more time if we can, based on federal regulations and CDOT. And then about 3 months prior to the end of that fiscal year, they'll hold another progress evaluation and a recommendation meeting based on those, and whether or not those need to be rolled forward. So this just outlines mainly a process for PPACG to make sure that we're really keeping on top of these projects, and that we don't have a lot of projects that are being held up because we haven't started the process early enough. So those are the only changes we made to the document, and TAC and CAC have seen these and feel comfortable with it. But please feel free to email me with any other suggestions or comments based on these by the April 29th deadline. Otherwise, I can take questions now.
Great. Are there any questions for Catherine on this item? Okay, sorry about the background noise. Stand by a second. Okay. That's sorry about that. That's my printer, if you can hear it, and I'm trying to get it to turn off. Okay, there we go. Thank you very much. I don't think we have any other questions. So Catherine, thank you very much for that item as well. Let's move on now to the strategic plan quarterly report, April 2021.
Good morning again, Jessica McMullen. I am here to give you a quick update on what has happened on your strategic plan items in the last quarter. Quick summary, as you guys know, you developed the first strategic plan in PPACG's history in 2018. We just did an update to it last fall. And we've seen some really great growth and progress on the strategic plan goals in this first quarter already. So just some of the highlights, we've done some great things with the advocacy objectives, influencing legislation, having people testify, working with Lauren, all of the work we've done reviewing transportation funding proposals, the information sharing, development of the Enterprise GIS website, very exciting. The aging public outreach and housing options, they've been doing a lot of reaching out and providing information as needed. The transportation tip and UPWP development and updates, a great deal of which you just heard from Catherine. And some great program excellence items as the joint land use study has been growing into a military planning program. The air quality ozone advance was approved early this year. Distribution of CARES Act funding for senior services, and the continued support for members whenever you have questions and whenever we have grants to share. So, and information on almost anything. Our job is, we've been working very hard to keep you informed. And then you've got a much longer list instead of just the summary as the attachment. So if you want any details on what I'm talking about or what I'm saying, please let me know.
Great. Are there any comments or questions from anybody on this item? Actually, for me, if you might just kind of scroll through slowly, let's just kind of stand here on objective 1 through 3. See if anybody has any comments on these updates. And these are the items that you've added in here that you believe are supportive of that particular objective.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Do you have yeah, continue on. There you go. And let's continue a little further. Just going back just a second for me on the objective 3, the heat maps for new construction. Is that available on the website, or could that be something sent to the board?
I'm sure we can. They're tracking the last, they were designed to just show us the last 10 years and were really neat. So I can definitely share those with the board.
Great. And if any other board members have any questions on any of these as we scroll through, please let us know. On this mobility guide for MCC, do you have a little bit more on that? Is that completed or on its way to getting completed?
It is on its way still, although if Laura is still on the line, she'll have more information than I do. But it is not completed yet.
Okay. It'd be great at one point or another, maybe either in the drafting process or once completed, to make sure a copy gets out to the board members.
It will.
Okay. And there's quite a lot, which is awesome. The funding for Silver Key to hire a dedicated housing navigator, what was that funding amount? Do you know?
I am sorry, I do not have that offhand. We can try to look it up for you if you'd like and get back to you on it.
That'd be great. Thank you. On the support legislation for broadband and high-speed internet, I'd like to just bring up a point. I think it's interesting, and if I brought it up before, that's great, but there are some companies that are working extensively on providing space-based worldwide broadband. The SpaceX company is one of those. And I'm not going to remember the exact numbers, but I think they've already launched 6,000 satellites or some huge number like that. There's actually test markets that are already functioning. The response back from those test markets is that the system is working well. And what I would be recommending is that everybody needs to be aware that there is a new type of service that is space-based that could provide rural broadband on a worldwide scale. Now it's you have to buy the service, and then you have to buy home equipment, which is a satellite dish and some other stuff. So it's not something that comes without some cost, but it might be great for this board to get a quick presentation or a briefing on it, just so that we're all aware of it. Because I think from this point going forward, when anybody's trying to work on resolving a rural broadband problem, they need to be including in that conversation how space-based broadband could be part of the answer.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, I did share that. There was a good discussion about that when you brought that up last week at the board workshop. So I shared it with the informal broadband working group that's been working in the region. It's representatives from Woodland Park, Manitou Springs, City of Fountain, I think Monuments on there as well, and reached out to Park County as well. So they're going to meet around that issue. I don't know exactly when yet, but maybe they kind of get their minds around that and then brief the board here at an upcoming meeting on what the plan is and what they see as far as the potential there. Happy to get that.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. I had an opportunity to speak with General Raymond about this, and he was talking about the technology and what this is going to do. And basically, I came away from that conversation that the space-based broadband is going to be one of these game-changing technologies that's similar to the invention of the telephone. I mean, it's actually a huge deal. So I think that's actually going to change a lot of the challenges we have with trying to get people to have broadband, in their homes, no matter where they live. All right.
Well, I will volunteer to be the guinea pig because I have tried it all. I've tried the satellite dishes. We're on DSL and it's incredibly slow. I have to hotspot. I'm like the poster child for the rural person who lives next to the city that can't get decent internet connection. So if you need volunteers, sign me up. Cause
And I had a conversation about this with Dick Elsner, and Dick, you might want to maybe provide an input. I recall you said you had a friend that had signed up for it, had actually gotten the service, is actually really pleased with it, but that there's going to be so much demand for this that there will be a ton of people signed up to buy the satellite dishes, and their issue is going to be, at least for the near term, sufficiently ramping up the manufacturing for people to buy the ground equipment in order to get the service.
Yeah, the gentleman that I know lives in Ranch of the Rockies, and if everybody knows where Antero Reservoir is, that's where he lives, is close to it. His service is amazing. It beats anything just about anywhere else in the county. The issue will be that, of course, they've got to manufacture dishes, and then they've got to manufacture, the equipment that's inside your house. And I think that is going to be the part that slows them down in implementation, is the demand, I think, is going to be a lot higher than they're going to be able to supply, probably for a year or two.
Thank you, Dick. The point obviously is that for any broadband conversations, space-based broadband needs to be part of the conversation going forward, because it's a new service and it's going to be a worldwide service. Okay,
And especially
continuing now. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, especially in rural areas, if you're in a city, I would still hold out for fiber to the home and some of those, because you know, if you're in an apartment, you can't put a dish up on the roof for everybody. So there's still going to be a lot of emphasis there. But when you get into cities, you have, you know, private industry doing all of that. It's just when you get out into rural areas, private industry isn't interested because they can't afford it. So I think this is going to make a big change in rural Colorado on how we get our internet.
Thank you. Let's continue to scroll. All right, that's it, I think. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate providing that quarterly report. Any other last comments or questions on any of the information items? And Sharon has a comment in chat saying pretty impressive stuff, so awesome. Thank you, Jessica. All right, so at this point, let's go on to 7, and we'll start with the military installation reports. Before we get into specific reports from the military installations, Norm Steen did send me a note, and he would like to make a statement. He's got some kind of an announcement. I don't know what it is, so I'm looking forward to it. So Norm, if you're still there, why don't you go ahead and proceed?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your trust. I know this is kind of open-ended, but just want to announce that Congressman Lamborn has agreed to co-chair the National Defense Communities Caucus in the House. Really want to extend our thanks to Keith Klain, who worked a lot through the Association for Defense Communities on this. The Congressman agreed to take this on yesterday. He'll co-chair that National Defense Caucus with Representative Derek Kilmer out of the state of Washington. Of course, he's next to Joint Base Lewis McChord, but this is a big step for bringing Pikes Peak regional defense communities to the national front. So I see Keith is on the line. Keith, do you have some comments there?
You know, only that, you know, Congressman Lamborn has availed himself to us in the Association of Defense Communities the last several years, and we're very grateful for that. And I think as a result of those efforts and the cooperation he's extended recently, he was offered this opportunity to chair the co-chair the caucus in the House. And we're very grateful for his accepting it. More to follow.
Great. That's outstanding news. And any comments or questions to this item? Very good. I think that really bodes well. Thank you, Norm, for the announcement. And of course, you know, for those of you that might not know, we have actually a Defense Mission Task Force, DMTF. Keith runs that. And they are very deeply engaged in the Defense Communities Association and really working on a lot of national issues. So with Congressman Lamborn being chair of that caucus, that will really, I think, immensely improve coordination with our federal legislators.
Sure. Thanks, Dan.
Outstanding.
Yep.
All right, let's go forward with the military installation reports. And Who do we have online from our military facilities?
So good morning, everyone. This is Colonel Jen Fitch, the IMA to the commander out at Peterson Schriever Garrison. I only have a couple updates. Just that this summer we will have a change of command. Colonel Jim Smith, for those of you who have had
Colonel Fitch, I think somehow your microphone, yeah, turned off. There you go. I think you're back on.
Sorry, I'll start over. Did you hear me speak?
Up until just maybe the last 10 seconds.
Okay, great. So Colonel Jim Smith was promoted or confirmed for the rank of Brigadier General March 25th. So he will move on to another assignment yet to be determined this summer. He'll be replaced by Colonel Shay Warakomsky, who is coming to us from Scott Air Force Base. And the 28th of June will be the change of command. Colonel Warakomsky, Shay, is a career cyberspace officer. He graduated here from the Academy in 1998 and had 3 years of assignments at Schriever and on the Commander's Action Group in at AF Space here at Peterson as well. So no stranger to Colorado Springs. That change, as I said, will occur on the 28th of June. That's exciting news to hear about Congressman Lamborn co-chairing that caucus. We look forward to a continued partnership with the DMTF and all the teams do to support us here in the local area. Pending any questions.
Thank you, Colonel. Are there any questions for Colonel Fitch? All right, proceeding forward, are there any other military installation reports? Okay, hearing none, let's go ahead and let's go on down to our CDOT monthly update, as all the others are included in the minutes or in the package.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Chair. Shane Ferguson from CDOT. Rich is on annual leave this week, and so I will be providing the update. I'll start off with a gap when it comes to the closures. I believe you guys have seen over the past week and may have run into during the nighttime hours on I-25 north at the gap. Moving forward, we're expecting closures on Thursday night from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. and then again on Friday and Saturday night. So for Thursday, it's going to be the northbound lanes diverting onto the on and off ramps. So it'll still be able to move forward. But the reason for these closures are girders being set on the bridge at County Line Road. And so not having obviously vehicle traffic underneath that activity. And then for Friday night and Saturday night, both at 8 p.m. through 5 a.m. Southbound direction will have closures. Again, traffic will be diverted to the on and off ramp. Expect about a 20 to 30 minute delay depending on volume of traffic, obviously, through that closure. Last weekend we had some closures as well on, or detouring, I'm sorry, not detouring, but lane closures to a single lane on I-25. And I sat through one of those in the evening, and it took me about 20 minutes to get through that activity. But again, that was overnight. As far as my understanding, the current project is still on schedule and within the budget originally allotted, or as allotted. I will move on to, and at the end of this, if there are any questions, I can answer those as needed. But I will go on to the Research and Powers project. Currently, the project is under advertisement. Bids will open next week on the 22nd. I can tell you we have received quite a bit of activity from contractors, major contractors throughout the area, asking questions and having a lot of interest in this project. So we're expecting hopefully competitive bids when we open the bids on the 22nd. We are looking at a groundbreaking activity for this project. Currently, we're looking around the 3rd, possibly the 4th week of June. That's still to be locked down, but just a heads up for those that would be participating in that activity. With respect to the MAMSIP project, the I-25, State Highway 94, Charter Oaks Ranch Road, and El Paso County South Academy, as well as is El Paso County as well. That project, we are continuing with pre-construction design, moving progressively forward. We are still waiting from
USDOT, the contract agreement. My understanding is it is in the Secretary of Interior's department for signature. So we hope to have that agreement signed this month. That releases the $18.3 million that's allotted to that project. Obviously, we'll have to go through our contracts and agreements section just to get that all signed and correctly documented and budgeted prior to moving forward. But once that is in place, our next steps will be to be working with the contractor and negotiating price, and hope to see activity, fingers crossed, early summer on moving forward with the actual construction. Again, waiting on the agreement from USDOT, but I believe it is in the Department of Interior's, Secretary of Department of Interior's department for signatures. Continuing to move on as to construction activities planned this summer, US 24 bridge replacement between Peyton and Calhan. That project will begin in earnest May 3rd with the contractor, so we'll start seeing activity on that project for that bridge replacement. The ramp surfacing through town, which includes North Academy, Briargate, Interquest, and on State Highway 115, the NORAD exit. Resurfacing of those ramps, that project will begin on May 16th. That activity will be primarily nighttime over the hours. A project out west, Wilkerson Pass improvements, bids opened and will be awarded to that project, and expect activity to begin in early June. That involves on the west side of the pass as you head down the pass, shoulder widening, resurfacing, guardrail improvements just along that windy component of Wilkerson Pass as you head to the west. In Park County, US 285 at 9, that project is still on track for an advertisement of September 9th, so late summer, early fall timeframe. The sister project to that, the US 285 bridge replacement, which is south of Fairplay, was awarded to the contractor. Just due to environmental constraints, we have them not starting until after the 4th of July in earnest when it comes to activities within the creek and closures on 285. You may see some early activity on the sides, staging areas, et cetera, but for the most part, the work won't begin until after the 4th of July. And then the last project I'll mention is the US 50 surface treatment project west of Canyon City in Fremont County. That project will begin here within, let's say, the next week to 2 weeks as well, as the contractor is staging to get ready. That is the next phase of what was recently paved last year west of Canyon City within the canyon on US 50. So expect some delays if you head that direction. Again, some of that is, the major activity is obviously temperature dependent. It is all asphalt being placed. And so with that, I will open it up for questions you may have for me at this time. Oh, Commissioner, I believe you are muted.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any questions for Shane or CDOT? And hearing none, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, it takes a second.
Yeah.
Shane, I wanted to thank CDOT for the meeting that we had this Saturday before Easter on the Highway 115 project. I think we had fantastic turnout considering it was the day before Easter.
Right.
I mean, it's just the way it worked out with everybody's schedules, but I really appreciated the staff coming, and you got some fantastic feedback from the people who live in the area. They're excited about being, my impression that they're excited about being included on the beginning of the project when you're just in the planning stages, so that they have a chance to express their concerns for the safety on that roadway. And thanks PPACG staff for helping host that too.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I thank you, Sharon. I was going to bring that up as well, but you already did, and I appreciate that. I was at that meeting as well. First of all, thank you to Andy and the PPACG team for being the official host of that meeting. And we did hold that meeting in my boardroom because we had so much citizen participation. We needed a larger venue, something larger than we could do at the PPACG offices. So El Paso County offered the room, PPACG hosted, CDOT gave the presentation, and the citizens were there to hear from that area, were there to hear about CDOT's plans for revamping 115. And Shane, could you just give a real short, quick update about what those plans are.
Sure, absolutely. So the project really begins on the north end near that, I believe it's Gate 5 on Fort Carson. And so if you're familiar with the area, it's really a 4-lane section that as you go south on 115 dives down to a 2-lane section that's constricted by the bridge at Rock Creek Bridge. So that is the northern limits of the project. The scope of the work is multiple parts. Actually, it's as you head south on 115, many of you that have driven that corridor know that the pavement condition is horrendous. A lot of truck traffic and a lot of just cracks and poor pavement conditions. So first part of the project is really rehabilitation of the pavement as much as we can and taking it as far south as we can on that corridor. Second part of the project is replacing Rock Creek Bridge. We will be replacing that structure, raising the profile slightly, widening the structure significantly to accommodate, as you know, the 4-lane section, and then tying that 4-lane section south to the existing passing lane section as well. And so we will be continuing that 4-lane section from one passing section to the southern part. So that's about 1.5 miles of widening, if you will. Third component of the project is truly safety improvements. And so looking at different areas which involve either addition of guardrail or acceleration and deceleration lanes to be included into different parts of the communities in that area, and incorporating those improvements along that corridor as we can. So it's a multifaceted project, a lot of different moving parts of it, but it's really excited to see this come into play. We all know how many needs we have in our community, but this is definitely one of them.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it was interesting, the comments from the citizens there. At one point I asked the question, how many people have had their windows damaged from rocks kicked up either by the poor pavement or maybe the trucks driving by? Every single hand was raised. So it's pretty obvious that there's good work that needs to be done down there. And I appreciate CDOT picking that up and working on some of those issues. And I'll concur with Sharon's comments. The citizens, I think, were pretty excited about being given the opportunity to participate early on in the project so that some of the requirements can be, refined. And I think a key part of that is acceleration and deceleration lanes so they can get on and off that highway. Because maybe many people know this, but in that part of the highway, which is down to just one lane each way, there are residential roads that butt up against the highway in a 90-degree entrance. And then people are really blasting down that highway going north and south, and the residents trying to get in and out. It's just a very dangerous environment for them. So they talked a lot about acceleration and deceleration lanes, and hopefully CDOT will be able to add a lot of those along with these other improvements. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for CDOT then at this point? And hearing none, let's go to the stack update.
Okay, good morning still. This is Holly. We have had 2 stack meetings since our last, just based upon how the months fall. Since our last PPACG meeting. So the first one in March, we had a little kerfuffle about a resolution on transportation funding. As a committee, we wanted to make sure that it had a sustainable long-term revenue source for our new legislation they're doing that also supports statewide funding. A little bit of a discussion, but I think we all got on the right page at the end. They are talking about the next tranche of Senate Bill 267 funding and proposed for Region 2. If you realize CDOT Region 2 looks all the way from Park County all the way down to Baca. So it's a lot of projects. Some of the big things are Pueblo's going to get a new freeway finally. That's 12 million. I thought that one was interesting since I've lived here for 32 years and they've needed it. Woodman Road will get a new mobility hub and the Monument Park and Ride will be upgraded. There's also some funding in there for Southwest Chief track improvements to match a grant. We also do get our powers and research money, safety improvements on Highway 115, just as that we were talking about. And they're going to help fund a Colorado Springs Downtown Transit Center. So we're going to be working, those are the ones actually right within our PPACG region. And then amongst rural paving, this project's 21 million. I thought that was interesting. State Highway 96 near Eads all the way to Sheridan Lake. So I think it's interesting to see the ones that that cost a lot of money. That one must be in bad shape. So those are the projects. I think the Transportation Commission will be, once that funding is ready to be issued, they'll be taking up those projects. And, you know, so we got an update on those projects. I did have Eric Stone attend our meeting on Friday, but he is unable to be here today. But those I think are pretty much the basic things we are talking about. John and I are serving on the greenhouse gas kitchen cabinet, which is an interesting process. We are working to make sure that they don't put any onerous regulations in there that delay our projects. And that's the key thing. We don't know exactly how it's all going to work. We're all going to have a greenhouse gas budget. And that was the discussion on chocolate. We didn't know if it would go all the way throughout the whole state, or if one area of the state will get more budget than the other. And then finally, anxiously awaiting, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we'll get that transportation bill dropped. As soon as we get language, we're going to get it out to everybody so that we can look at it closely and have a chance to speak on it on behalf of PPACG as commissioners, city council members, and I wear a CCI hat as well. So we're looking forward to seeing what that says. There'll be some things we like in there, and there's going to be some things we don't like. So it'll be interesting to watch that come down. And that is it. Lots on transportation in the next 4 weeks.
Great. Thank you for the update. Are there any questions for Holly regarding the stack? All right, hearing none. Andy, you are up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just 2 items respecting our time. First, we're going to do interviews this week for our military planning program manager position. That's the position formerly occupied by Brian Potts. So we got a great pool of candidates to interview. So more news on that once we get through the interview process. And then secondly, it's my real hope that we can start getting back together partially in person in a hybrid setup, possibly as soon as May for our next board meeting. That's my hope. We've got a really good plan for the technology upgrades that we need as far as cameras and sound system and so forth, and monitors. Would have to be consistent with whatever public health measures are in place, if anything is in place, and we'll have to identify what our capacity could be within our conference room, but more to come on that. My hope is that we can start hosting partial in-person, partial zooming in board meetings and committee meetings starting in May. So I'll keep you posted on that, but looking forward to seeing at least a large portion of us back in person here soon. That's all I've got.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Are there any questions for Andy? I appreciate the brevity because we are running a little bit long. Okay, hearing none, let's see if we have any member entity announcements.
Yes, we do.
Yes, please, go ahead.
So, and some of you have probably seen this, and I know at least the commissioners and city council members are aware. This is Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments is a regional planning organization, and probably one of the most significant things long-term is the city of Colorado Springs and the county of El Paso have entered into an annexation MOU, essentially an agreement that provides for various communications, various inputs. And I think for our metropolitan planning area, this is a significant impact. And, you know, signals, I think, a desire of these two governments to work together. As we look at the growth and development that will occur in the Pikes Peak area, absolutely critical that we work together. And it addresses things like everything from wildfire and stormwater to transportation infrastructure and how things are transferred and what the inputs are. So just wanted to make folks aware of that. And I know that, well, I don't know. My understanding is at some point El Paso County may want to pursue that with some of the other organizations that are members of this, but I want to thank the commissioners and my colleagues on council for their work on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Wayne. I would like to echo that. We basically started this, kind of had some early elements of it last year, but really got into a negotiation in earnest in January. And now we have this annexation IGA completed. I think the final conclusion of that was a vote unanimously in favor from City Council, which took place this week. And so the county commissioners are grateful and thankful to City Council for that vote. And then earlier we had voted, and I'll just mention that it was a unanimous in favor amongst the commissioners as well. The provisions in this IGA are very interesting. It's basically all about collaborating better, earlier announcements, cross flow of information, and trying to make a really awesome annexation process. And the county is grateful to the city for entering into that, because current legislation basically leaves most of the authority with municipalities. And the county just deeply appreciates the willingness of the city to go into this to improve the cooperation. And this is going to help save money in our community, I think, as we go through the process of annexations. And to your point, Wayne, the county does intend to, or in some cases, I think already has, offered an opportunity to the other municipalities. If you haven't heard about it and you're from one of these other municipalities, we will be making that offer soon to see if the other municipalities would like to enter into a similar agreement with the county. Obviously, the big gorilla is between the county and the city of Colorado Springs, but we do have annexation opportunities with the other municipalities, and a similar agreement might be very helpful in those processes as well. So we'll be at least offering that to the other municipalities. I think in some cases, the offer has already gone forward. So thank you very much for that update, Wayne. I think it's a great document. Really looking forward to cooperating through that IGA with the city of Colorado Springs. Super. Any other updates? All right, meeting schedule. Andy, I don't know if there's probably not much to say, just when we'll be holding the next meeting.
Next board meeting is Wednesday, May 12th, but then you've got the, thank you, Jess, meeting scheduled for other committees here at the end of your packet.
Okay, it is at the end of the packet for people to review.
Yep.
I don't think we have any more business. One last opportunity. Does anybody have any last minute item they want to bring up? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much. At this point, I'll adjourn the meeting. It is 11:18. My apologies for running a little bit long, but we had some great content and great conversation in this meeting. Thank you again, everybody. You all have a great Wednesday. Take care.
Thanks.
And did you see the link that I shared?